Today on Pilot's Discretion, our guest is aircraft sales expert and YouTube host Mark Pilkington. He talks about buying a used airplane, Cessna history, and launching a new YouTube channel. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Hi pilots, I'm John Zimmerman, and thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion from Sporties. Visit sporties.com/podcast for today's show links and access to our complete archives. And don't forget about our newest website, IFR Focus. It's packed with real-world tips for instrument pilots and features in-depth articles from writers like Jeff Van West and Elaine Coe. Visit ifrfocus.com to subscribe for free. Today, I'm joined by a dual-threat pilot. For his day job, Mark Pilkington runs the highly respected aircraft sales and brokerage company Skywagons, which for over 30 years has been the place to contact if you're looking for a Cessna 180, 185, or 206, although they have grown into many other airplanes, including Moonies, Pipers, and much more. But some years ago, Mark started Skywagons University on YouTube as a way to educate viewers about the pros and cons of different airplane models, and it has since grown as well into a unique and highly entertaining channel with all kinds of aviation content. Mark, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
Hi, how are you, John?
Doing great. And I want to start with the aircraft buying process because you know a lot about this. You've bought and sold, I think, over 2,000 airplanes last I heard. But many pilots, buying and selling an airplane is a very rare thing. They might do it once or twice in their life. So I want to start with some do's and don'ts, especially for the first-time airplane buyer. Given all of your experience, what are some things they should have in mind as they start shopping around?
The main thing I find on first-time buyers is they're expecting the quality of a used car. Like if you go to Toyota and buy a new Lexus that's 3 years old, it's perfect. If you buy a 73-year-old Cessna 170 or a 180, it's going to have squawks. So you can't expect perfection. So experienced pilots know that, and they look at the squawk list, they do a pre-purchase inspection, but a first-time buyer is looking for perfection. So you've got to realize it's got to have acceptable squawk. So in a pre-buy, you're looking for the major deal breakers, but the little stuff, tires, brakes, lights, a tear in the leather, a broken bit of plastic is normal. So I kind of guide people through what the expectations are of normal, because the national fleet is aging. The national fleet is like 50 years old, even though we've got new production today.
So how about buying an airplane with damage history? Is that an automatic no-go, or is that something I should still look at?
Well, they've all got it. I mean, they don't all have it, but it's almost expected now as the planes get older and older. So you want to look at when it was fixed, who fixed it, and how extensive it was. If it was sunk in salt water and it was, that's a major deal. If it was flipped on its back in snow, that's a major deal. If it was just a gear up and the belly was fixed by a service station and the log entry is perfect, it's detrimental because it's not the original plane, but it's not a big negative because the plane is back to what it was or better than it was new. And to the point almost where, say on a 195 or a 185 or some older vintage type plane, if it was ground looped and then repaired extensively by a shop and upgraded at the time, it's almost a plus because you've got new bolts, new pulleys, new cables, so it's not a plus, but it just means that someone's looked at it more recently than 1954.
How about some of those working airplanes? Because you deal a lot in the 185s, the 180s, planes like that. Some of those have been flown hard. They've been in Alaska. They've been on floats. What are some special considerations there if I want to buy maybe my dream backcountry airplane, but it's got an interesting history?
Good question. I mean, you could buy a 53 180 that's been flown in Prescott, Arizona since new with one owner, or you could buy an 85 185 that worked for an oil company and then went to Alaska and was sunk in salt water on floats. So the newer plane doesn't mean it's the better plane. It just means who's looked after it and maintained it. So you've got to read its logs, check on the maintenance, the ADs, have a pre-purchase inspection done. Because I jokingly say that the warranty is 500 feet or 500 RPM because there just isn't a warranty on a used plane. You must assess it at the time of purchase to see what it's like at that moment. But read its logs and know its history.
So you bring up the pre-buy, which is a critical step. I still hear people skipping this step, shockingly. I can't believe it. But talk me through what a good pre-buy is. Some people will tell you the only good pre-buy is an annual. Some people will tell you never get the pre-buy done by the seller's shop. What do you think about those tips and other advice you have for somebody who's coming up on that pre-buy stage?
So that's interesting because an annual, you can have a plane that needs paint, needs interior, the windows are smoky, the radios are basic, and the tires are half bald, and it passes annual. But a pre-buy will tell you what those cosmetics are like. So a pre-buy is nearly more extensive than an annual because you'll get the opinion of the mechanic on the quality of the paint, the interior, the radios, all the little things that aren't airworthiness but count in the value of the plane. So what I normally recommend is if a plane is coming up for an annual within the next few months, do a pre-buy on it, and with that squawk list, roll it into an annual. So you say at the end of the pre-buy, this is tolerable, let's continue and annual it. And then there's a participation perhaps sometimes with the seller because he's going to do an annual anyway. But the pre-buy lets you know if you want to make it go the rest of the way. And then you do the annual and you make it airworthy. But the pre-buy will let you know all the cosmetic things, and the annual will let you know all the airworthiness things. So a combination of the two is a way to cover the bases.
Great tip. How about upgrades? Because I've been involved over the years with a few airplanes where you try to buy a good shell of an airplane, but you expect you're going to put a new engine in it, you're going to do some avionics work, maybe even paint and interior. What should I evaluate if I'm looking for one of those project planes?
Well, a lot of times we find that the project plane is priced as if it isn't. So you've got to, you look at the value of the plane with mid-time engine, average time airframe, 7 out of 10 paint and interior, good IFR radios, and in annual. And then you deduct from that the value of it needing the paint, needing the engine, needing the interior, needing the radios, and you end up with a figure which could be almost zero, but it never is zero. So you have a perception of the residual value of the project. So if you found like a 55 Cessna 180 in a barn that needed everything in pieces that had been there for 50 years, it could still be worth $50,000, but $50,000 more assembling and painting it, and maybe even doing an engine, adding some radios, you could then have a finished plane. So it's not always as simple as I'll do it myself and end up with the plane that I want, because you could end up in it more than it's worth, which isn't a problem if you're going to keep it for a long time, because as we all know, they're appreciating just simply due to supply and demand, because there's less of them and more people want them. And as I've seen in the last 28 years, my golden rule of 180 valuation back in the early 90s was you get the year, 1955, add 3 zeros, and you have approximate value, 55 grand. Now you triple that.
Wow.
So the rarity is making that there's more and more people that want them, less and less people, less and less of them. So they are obviously in demand.
So let's assume we've bought our airplane and now it's time to get checked out in it. This is something you do a lot of on your channel. It's great to watch you fly all kinds of different airplanes, all kinds of different avionics. So maybe walk me through how you check yourself out in a new airplane or a new model. And then also for a new owner, what should I be doing, assuming it made it through pre-buy, the deal is done, but now it's time for me to fly it?
Is this for somebody who's bought one that hasn't flown the type?
Correct.
If you're not tailwheel endorsed, you should probably have some time in a smaller tail dragger than a 180 or 185 and get the rating, because it's not the plane to get checked out. They're not a bad tail dragger. They're actually pretty docile, but they're big and they're expensive. And if you don't have the time in them, the insurance will be a nightmare. But normally it's a few hours of checkout. Say you've got a tailwheel endorsement, you're buying a 180, or say you're buying a Turbo 206 and you've only flown a 182. An instructor with 3 or 4 hours of time on it will check you out in that plane and make sure that you're safe and insurable.
This brings up insurance, which is another tricky topic. I sometimes will talk to a new airplane owner who has signed on the dotted line before talking to his insurance broker and deciding whether he can even be insured in the airplane. So what's the right way to approach insurance? When do I start talking to a broker? What do I need to be thinking about there?
Well, with insurance, there's only like 4 or 5 companies that do aviation insurance, but there's like 20 or 30 brokers that sell it. So if you call around, what we normally find is that they all talk to each other and they all know who's calling who. So if you call with a name and a number and an N number and get a quote and you don't like it and you call somebody else, they will then see on the computer that you've already been quoted and they'll stay in that region of price. If you call, that would be calling an insurance company direct. If you call a broker, the broker will get you 4 or 5 quotes based on different parameters, and you can choose one that's good, but it's not going to be a massive difference in them. And they want to see time in type. They want to see time in retractables, high performance, tail wheel, and it can vary enormously. So you should call, probably when you choose the type you want to buy, you should call an insurance broker and give them a hypothetical scenario, and they'll give you an estimate of what it might cost. And I sometimes say to people to get a 6-month quote rather than a year, because in the 6-month quote, you can get the hours you need. And in the second 6 months, you've got the time and type and it'll be less. So I would say before you start shopping for the plane, get the quote.
Yeah, time and type is what matters there for sure. That's the one to focus on.
And also the hull value. Pilot hours, time and type, value of the hull is what makes them expensive or not.
So let's go to the other end and talk about selling an airplane. And maybe I'm decided to part with my beloved airplane. What are the mistakes you see there when somebody calls you up and asks you to sell their airplane for them?
Well, selling a plane can be as straightforward as running an ad, and if someone calls, turns up, pays for it, flies it away. But that's dreamland. So normally, if somebody wants to sell a plane, they get the phone calls, they get the trade-in offers, they get, I want to finance. Can we use escrow? Can we do a demo flight on a Saturday afternoon when it's Father's Day? And and the endless calls and the promises start to build up, and then people get tired of it, and they call a broker like me to sell it. And I do that 24/7, so I deal with it. But I can filter through the buyer, see if they're qualified. And I mean, I like the plane to be at Placerville, but I've sold some that aren't. But it's difficult because the seller then has to provide me with specs and photographs to put it online. And then sometimes a buyer will be more close to the airport than I am. But if I've got it here at Placerville, I'll do the full service on the whole thing and literally send the money to the seller at the end after accepting an offer. But financing, escrow, FAA paperwork, title clearing, pre-purchase inspections can be a bit too much for a busy private pilot that's selling his own plane, and that's why they use a broker.
A good broker is definitely worth it in my experience. So, Mark, we've been talking about the process of buying or selling an airplane and lots of good tips there, but let's pivot to the airplane itself because that's why pilots get into this. And I want to talk about some Cessna history because you know so much of it. You're an encyclopedia of Cessna models and history. So if I'm trying to choose between, say, a 180, a 182, a 185, a 206, all kind of that utility or semi-utility Cessna 4-seat airplanes, how do I pick the right one? Is there a unique personality for each of those models if I'm shopping around?
There really is. I mean, obviously the 172 is the staple trainer for everybody. I mean, the 152, 150s is even lower than that, but at least you can take some more people in a 172 and it's a little bit bigger. But if you wanted a turbo 206 and you've just got your pilot's license because you've got 4 kids, that's going to be a hard plane to buy, own, and insure. So you'd probably not want it. So I ask people, what's the mission for the plane? They go, oh, it's just commuting up and down California, visiting, my business offices, or it's family, to the backcountry of Idaho, or I go to visit, I've got family down in Southern California at university, and I have to go down to, if it's high altitude and mountainous, then I talk about turbos. If it's high speed, then I talk about, high performance retractables, long distance. If it's utility and family, hauling of camping gear, it can be 180s and 182s. But a lot of people have already narrowed their search to something they've got in mind. And then I see whether that fits what they can do with it. And for example, a 182, they built them from 56 to 86, 10 years off, 97 to now. A 182 is probably the most versatile plane you can possibly own and buy because you can buy it, own it, insure it, maintain it from the beginning and learn in it. And you could even keep it afterwards and use it as the family wagon. And I use the Chevy Tahoe as a scenario where it'll haul everything, it'll do everything. It's fast enough, it's big enough. It's not as good as a Super Cub, it's not as fast as a Bonanza, but it's insurable because it's fixed gear, it's non-turbo, it's maintainable. Every airport you land at can look after it. So I narrow it down to what the person that's looking for the plane feels like they need to do with it and see whether I can help them choose the correct plane. But most have already got a feel in mind of what they want before they call.
Yeah, I would agree. The 182 to me is one of the great all-around airplanes. It may not be the best at anything, but it's pretty good at a lot. We have one here at Sporty's in our employee flying club, and it's just a joy to fly it. But the 185 to me is the interesting model because it was a relatively rare airplane. Cessna didn't make a ton of them. And it hasn't been made in many decades now, but it is still so loved by so many pilots. Why is that?
185, they made 4,400 of them, and there's about 2,100 left. And they were built for utility. They were built in 61 to 85, and they are total utility. They're like a Jeep, a truck. They're an SUV of the air. They'll cruise like a Bonanza. They'll land like a Super Cub. They'll go cross country. You can camp under its wing. You can land it at a jet center. It does everything well. And I've got to admit, 100%, they're cool. People think they are cool. You get out of a 185 parked next to a Falcon 50 at a jet center, and the Falcon 50 pilot gets out and comes to talk with you because you survived landing it. You know, I mean, they're just one of those planes that just hit the mark perfectly, and they've got like a cult following, but they're also absolutely practical. You can have 520s, 470s, 550s. They can be on floats. They can be on skis. They can. I mean, and they're not a dangerous tail dragger. They're not like a Luscombe or a 185 or a Globe Swift or a 195 or a Globe Swift. So they're actually quite a docile tail dragger, but they're very, very practical.
How about that 195? It's a beautiful airplane, maybe the most beautiful airplane that I ever see at Oshkosh when I walk the flight line. Is it as hard to land as people say, or does it have a bad reputation?
Well, it's the three top ground loopers are Luscombe's 195s and Globe Swifts. And the 195 is there's a lot of weight behind the center line. And the saying is that if the tail wheel goes beyond the line of the main gear while landing, it's going to ground loop. But the good thing about a 195, it's one of the last radials, the last classic vintage radials that you can actually still own and use as a general aviation everyday plane. It's similar speed to a 180, 185, 182. It's similar fuel burn, but it's a radial. It's got that noise and that cool factor to it. And it's big, comfortable leather with wind down windows in it. I mean, it's vintage quality. But because of their ground looping history, they're hard to insure. So you can't jump into one out of a champ or something. You've got to have a bit of time and type and get some experience. But that is, the 195 is probably one of the long-lived and best-loved classics there is.
So help me with plane spotting. If I'm looking at an airplane on the ramp and I can't tell if it's a 180 or a 185, how do I know?
Now, that was an amusing time in my training when I first started working where I work. So from a distance, everyone can't tell. Even Jane's, the book, Jane's Aircraft Identification, it literally says that the 185 can be easily identified from the 180 by the floats. And there's a picture of it on floats. So a 180, well, I won't get into the full thing because it'd be an hour, but they look the same from a distance. 185s all have tall dorsal. The ventral fin forward of the dorsal fin is tall on a 185. On most 180s pre-1977, 76, they have the lower 6-inch high ventral fin rather than the 18-inch high ventral fin. So that would give it away. But a float kit 180 from 76 and newer has that big fin on it. But if you were to walk up to one on the ramp and you didn't know and it wasn't written on the cowling, there is a fuel pump cooling scoop between the cowl flaps on a 185 that a 180 doesn't have because it isn't injected. So that would be a giveaway. But as you get closer and closer to the end of production of the 180 in 81, 185s ended in 85, the 81 180 with a float kit is a spitting image for a 185, and you'd have to look at it to know the difference. But that was a game I played with my boss years ago, Joe Stansel, who trained me into how to tell them apart from a distance.
That's a game we play here at Sporty's too. Our office and store and flight school's right on the ramp here, and so we get airplanes pulling up all day long. And when somebody thinks they're really good at identifying airplanes, I'll see a big tail dragger 180 or 185 pull up and say, "Tell me what model Cessna that is." And that's usually the point where we lose it.
The trouble I had was I had to say the exact year to my boss.
That's truly the PhD in plane spotting.
Yeah.
So how about new versus old? You mentioned the break in Cessna. I think many pilots know 86 to 96. Cessna didn't make them. Let's say I'm looking at a 1982 Cessna 182 and a 2000 Cessna 182. What are the upgrades that matter? Let's forget avionics for a minute. Just how about the airframe and the systems in the engine? What should I be thinking about there?
Well, to be 100% honest with you, firewall back, they are the same plane. Literally. Textron owns Lycoming, so when they started production in 96, there was never going to be a Continental in a 180, 185, or 182. So they thought, right, we've got to put a 540 in this thing. So the 182s and the 206s got 540s in 96. So they've got a different firewall, a different engine. So you go back to 81 and older on the 182 turbo fixed gears, those rare 64 of them are left, turbo fixed gear normalized 182s. Those planes are the front end of the new generation 182s, and they're not. The engines aren't mounted on a 4-point web. They're mounted on the nose wheels, sort of mounting tray. And then the 182s, the new ones, the 206Hs and the new 182Ts, they've got that cowling, but they've got a 4-point engine mount. So the front end is designed differently because it's got the Lycoming in it. The cowling is different. The intakes are different. So if you look at one on the ramp, the Continental powered pre-86 182s are kind of more rounded, and the Lycoming powered ones are longer with sort of butterfly shaped air intakes in the front. But the ailerons, flaps, wings, doors, tail, fuselage, window configuration is the same. So really what you're getting in a newer plane, 97 or newer, is leather seats, air vents, avionics, a Lycoming engine, fuel injection, and $150,000 more for a very similar plane.
How about the old 0470? Some people say that's the biggest carb ice maker out there. Is that true, or is that an old wives' tale?
It depends where you operate it. If you've done a P-Ponk 470-50 or something, they had a problem with icing and they modified the carburetors to fix it. But really, it's just because it's carbureted, and all carbureted planes are going to be susceptible to ice if you're in that environment. But imagine trying to prop start a injected hot engine, in the field with a dead battery on a camping trip to Johnson Creek. If it's carbureted, you just hand prop it and fly away. If it's injected, you got to wait for it to cool down, prime it, and then start it. So the 470, there's the KL and R and S engines. Those KLRSs are in the 180s and 182s of all those 56 to 81 years. Those 470s are all very similar and very reliable. And if well looked after, will go well beyond TBO. But the trouble is, they get internal corrosion on cams and lifters, and that's easily inspected down the oil dipstick, down the oil filler neck, so you can see it. And, if you don't fly them, you'll get corrosion. If you get corrosion, you get cam issues, you get cylinder issues. So if they're well looked after, the 470 is probably one of the most reliable general aviation engines.
Yeah, corrosion is the enemy of all engines these days if you're not flying it, for sure. Mark, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about YouTube.
Have you ever struggled with a headset that pinches or breaks its seal just because you're wearing glasses or a hat? Or maybe you've tried to make a critical call from the cockpit, only to be met with muffled, unclear audio? It's more than just an annoyance. It's a distraction you don't need in the left seat. It's time for an upgrade. Introducing the Lightspeed Zulu 4. The brand new premium headset from Lightspeed Aviation, available exclusively at Sporties. Experience truly unparalleled comfort and superior noise reduction with Lightspeed's unique frame-fit ear seals. These aren't just comfortable, they adapt perfectly, maintaining a secure noise-blocking seal around your ears even when you're wearing glasses, sunglasses, or a hat. And when you need to communicate, be heard like never before. The Zulu 4 features Lightspeed's best microphone yet, which offers an AI-enhanced mode for Bluetooth, ensuring your phone call to ATC or flight service is a remarkable 2 times clearer. But the Zulu 4 isn't just new innovations. You still get Lightspeed's renowned active noise reduction for an incredibly quiet cockpit, plus the rugged build quality you trust with durable Kevlar cables and a robust stainless steel headband. The Lightspeed Zulu 4 offers the perfect blend of innovation and proven performance, all for $200 less than other premium headsets. Get yours today, only at Sporties. Visit sporties.com/Zulu4 to learn more. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion.
We are back with Mark Pilkington, who has a devoted following on YouTube with his Skywagons University channel. Mark, how did you get started making these videos in the first place?
Well, I've always been, afraid of public speaking and not good in front of a camera. And, Juan Brown from Blanco Lirio came into the office because he lives near me at Grass Valley. And he was asking me about 185s and float kits because he was thinking of buying one. And I went off at a tangent on year model changes in great detail. He said, "You should do this on YouTube." I said, "No one's going to be interested in this level of complexity. I say it on the phone every day." He goes, "Well, if you did it on YouTube, you'd save yourself doing it every day on the phone." So we ran a couple of quick, demo videos, and people liked them, and they even wanted more geekiness, as they call it. every rivet, every gear change, every window configuration. So I just kind of got carried away and got into it. And then people would bring me planes for sale. They're interesting. I would do a video on them. So I get the planes that are the subjects of my video as planes that I'm going to be selling, but I don't market them on the video as for sale because I want the video to last and be educational. I don't want it to expire at the sale. So I don't talk about prices. I just talk about that model, what it is, why it's different from its predecessors and its subsequent models.
They're great videos. And I know you've got a new YouTube venture you're working on called Plane Crazy Life, I think. It sounds like sort of a sequel to Airplane Repo. Tell me more about that. What's behind that story?
So there's a friend of mine in North Carolina called Cole Gaither who has Gaither Aviation, and he buys and sells planes similar to me. And he would call me when he was learning about planes, in the early years, what they're worth, what model, how much and I would, we'd bounce it off each other, and we'd kind of cover East Coast, West Coast. And then he's always had people say to him, you should make a show. You should do this. You should do this. So over the years, he's been sort of doing it. And we finally got together. We contacted Mike Kennedy from Airplane Repo because we knew Kevin really well, Kevin Lacey, who sadly recently passed away. And so we contacted Mike, and Mike said, that'd be interesting. Let's try it. So there's the three of us, and it's going to be Mike, me, Cole, Plane Crazy Life. The first episode is going to be about the Roswell air races. And in it, amazingly, I've got an L-19 jet that I've bought. Got talked into it by Cole, and I know its owner who lives near me here, and he'll be the pilot at Roswell, and we're going to have a hospitality tent called Plane Crazy Life. And it's just going to be all the antics and fun of it. It'll be, I kind of describe it as Top Gear, the British car motoring TV show, is about as much about cars as Plane Crazy is about planes. So it's the sort of fun and antics involved in aviation and the people you meet, the places you go, the adventures you have to do with what Cole does, what Mike does, what I do. And we would just sort of bounce around the place doing them as a kind of, not a sort of multi-episode series TV show like Discovery did for Airplane Repo, but more a sort of action fun 20-minute clip type of YouTube channel, but not with like amateurs and GoPros winging it. We're going to have an actual Los Angeles TV production company producing it. So fingers crossed, after Roswell's air races this year, we should have the first episode out and then continue on from there. And if it starts paying us back enough, it'll allow us to do much more.
Very interesting. I wonder if you could rewind, go back to the mid 1990s and tell yourself you're going to be a TV star. What your 1990s self would think about that?
Well, I remember watching Airplane Repo and seeing Mike Kennedy on it and going, wow, that guy. Oh, yeah, look, there's Kevin Lacey. How do they fly those planes? And then there I am at Roswell, at Oshkosh with Mike, just having a beer around a barbecue. And it's almost surreal. But it's exciting and it's fun. But I even hired a salesman here at work to take over for the slack when I have to be away to do the filming. But hopefully it's going to be brilliant. And it's just slowly evolved. So it is, if you think about it the way you just described it, it's kind of shocking.
All right, Mark, we always like to end Pilot's Discretion with a lightning round called Ready to Copy. So I'm going to throw out some rapid fire questions on a interesting variety of topics, and okay. I'll have you read back with your quick answer. Are you ready to copy?
Yeah, let's go.
Is there an airplane you should just avoid, one that you would tell the average pilot they should not buy?
Yes, anything that's not got a massive support behind it, like a Lark Commander or some weird plane that there aren't many of.
Is there an airplane you simply won't sell? If I showed up and asked you to sell this model, you're just going to politely say no?
Anything in bad condition or hasn't been maintained or is cosmetically and mechanically insufficient.
You can't put lipstick on a pig is what I hear.
Right.
What is your personal favorite model Cessna?
Probably the 185, just because of everything we talked about. It's just brilliant at everything.
And floats or skis?
Probably big tires.
Even better.
Yeah.
What's the most unusual airplane you have ever bought or sold?
An L-19 Czechoslovakian fighter jet, which I'm going to see on Monday.
You do a lot of flying in high-density altitude locations. You can see that in your videos, flying all over the West, crossing the mountains. So what's your best tip for a flatland pilot who's headed out west to do some flying?
Have the power, do the calculations, make sure that the plane can handle it before you risk people doing the high-altitude takeoffs, because it really sucks the power. The runways are longer and the altitudes are higher and the temperatures are higher, but A lot of planes are not up for it. We bought a Warrior in Santa Fe once, and it just wouldn't take off.
I've been there. I had to take off in a 172 in Albuquerque on a hot day, and I did not think the 10,000 feet was enough to get aloft on that runway.
Right.
I think you've had an engine failure or two in your career. So what advice do you have to share with other pilots, maybe who haven't experienced one?
There have been a couple of events. All of them, touch wood, have made it to flat surfaces where the plane survived. But I would say don't panic. Narrow it down to the basics. There's all kinds of things going on in your head, but just fly the plane to a flat place. And I mean, I haven't been between trees in a field and torn off the wings or anything, but just choose wisely. Always look out the window to have options, but fly the plane. An open door, an alternator failure, a turbo that isn't generating power. Fly the plane first.
How about a pre-buy tip? If I'm buying a 60, 70-year-old 180, 185, 206, something like that, what is one thing I should look at that will often get overlooked in a pre-buy?
A lot of AD currency. Make sure the ADs are all done. Compressions. Look at its internal structure. See where it's lived. Just make sure that the maintenance reflects the history that it's had and that it's been looked after.
You're based near Lake Tahoe, Northern California, beautiful place to fly. What is your favorite airport in that area?
The one I go to the most regularly, that's actually just a hub of activity, is Auburn. And I always say Auburn, and people can't understand me because I'm foreign, but it's Auburn. It's AUN. It's 20 miles north of us. And it's got shops, it's got restaurants. You can go there and you can have lunch. It's in a beautiful area. It's got a lot of activity. There's helicopters, there's planes on the ramp, there's people outside. It's very local to me. And I wish Placerville was like it, but that is probably one of my favorite airports. Give
us a tip for building a YouTube channel. Maybe one you had to learn the hard way or something that you don't see enough YouTubers take advantage of.
We learned just by trial and error. We pointed cameras at me and I waffled on. But I mean, I think just get to the subject quickly, keep the content varied and interesting. Don't keep people in suspense. Talk about what you want to talk about, and just get the facts across in a sort of mildly amusing and educational way.
I would also add that something you do well is you don't talk down to the audience. You don't baby them. You give them the information, geeky as you said, though it may be, and I think that's what people like.
Oh, thanks.
So you're British, but you've lived in America for a very long time. So give us something we Americans should bring over from the UK. Do we need more cricket, or do we need to make the Sunday roast a thing? What's something the Brits just do better?
You need pubs on every corner.
Hear, hear.
Not bars. You need a pub on every corner where you go on an evening and meet friends and have a quiet drink and catch up. It's a public house. It's a house that's public. It's great.
How about flying in Europe and the UK? What is something that Americans just take for granted?
The necessity and the space. Because in England, I mean, think of England as the size of California, and Oregon is stuck on top of it is like Scotland. If you own a plane, it's a luxury because you could drive. Whereas in America, it's essential. And people take it for granted. I sit in the plane over the Sierras, look down, and go, I'm at work. This thing, I mean, it's ridiculous. You can fly for 5 hours and be one state inland. And there's 48 more because there's 50 in total. Of course, we all know that, unlike some people. But it's just a very large country. So it's essential, but it's a real privilege to be able to sit in that thing and fly from place to place the way we can, the freedom we still have.
I know you also rent an Airbnb because why not? You're into so much. I believe it even comes with a pet cow, which is fantastic trivia. What advice do you have for an aspiring Airbnb owner? Give us some more tips from that part of your life.
Well, when we bought this old 1883 farmhouse at the end of the runway at Placerville, I'm not kidding, end of the runway. Placerville's on a hill and we're like 300 feet below the end of the runway. So the final is pretty high above us. But on it, there's a little cottage that we converted to Airbnb, and we just fixed it up, and it's available for people to come and rent. It's called the Milk House Cottage. And it's 2 miles from the airport. And I've even got a Lincoln Navigator at Placerville that people can borrow if they wanted to come and stay. But it's just, I mean, we fix it up. We put it on Airbnb. You've got to get several reports back from satisfied customers and you get a good rating. And my wife, Stephanie, she does all of that and she is brilliant at it. And she's like the superstar level of Airbnb hostess. But the cows there's an Angus and a Hereford, and the Hereford's the baby of the Angus, and they come up to the fence and you can feed them and you can wander around on the 11 acres. it's just a little slice of paradise, especially when it's green in the autumn and the fall and the spring and not the summer when it's burning.
There you go. Perfect flying destination. All right, Mark, our last question is always the same on this podcast. You have one final flight, and we want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
In my life.
In your life. This is it.
With unlimited fuel.
You get to pick and you don't have to pay.
I'd probably fly a fast Mooney across the Atlantic and park it in my family's backfield for once.
Sounds great. Mark, thanks for being on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporties, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and today's show links, visit sporties.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.